Jerm,
Yep.
I know that you obviously prefer throwing forehands to backhands. That's like the most obvious thing I've ever. No?
Popular opinion. It might not be the truth. But
Really? It's
No.
more taxing to throw forehand.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. When you throw a forehand, is there ever been any pressure that you may have one of the best forehands of all time, and that your brand is depending on the results of this shot, and your reputation could potentially go downhill if you screw it up?
As evidenced by our conversation earlier, I don't even play tournaments to make sure that I don't ever become officially bad. So yes, I know exactly what you mean.
No, of course I prefer forehands. It's always been just the natural shot for me. So
What's
proceed.
the distance
Yeah.
for you that if there's a usable forehand line that you're throwing up until 425, 450?
450's out. 450's out.
Okay.
I can get a shapeable, somewhat reliable golf shot with accuracy and consistency and hopefully easily repeatable up to like 425-ish.
Okay.
Is what I'm thinking, but that is pushing it. That's, I would say 400 feet is about, that's probably the fair answer. 400 feet is right about where I'm like, okay, if it's past that, I'm probably looking to go backhand.
Yeah. But like even at Hornet's Nest, that hole that you walk across the parking lot and you play to the gap, what hole is that? Is that 8?
Yeah.
You throw your forehand Aviator X3 when almost everyone in the world would throw a simple backhand there. But that's the preference. And that's probably what, 300?
Well, even I was throwing backhand on that one for a long time until I realized it's not about necessarily hyzering into the gap.
Right.
Yeah.
When you try to hyzer into the gap, you're actually making the gap smaller.
Yeah.
If I throw the forehand let's say it starts to hyzer a bit sooner than I want, the gap it actually opens up even more.
That's good.
It gives me more space to shape my second shot. So a lot of times when I'm making that decision, like, oh, why is Jeremy throwing a forehand here? Well, obviously it's the most comfortable shot, and I feel the chances of me hitting my gap and executing the angle and the speed are at the greatest chances for me. But also I'm thinking about where the disc could potentially land. I'm thinking about my misses. What could potentially go wrong? What do I feel like I can control? And all those things are kind of like, I don't think about those individually. It's just kind of a natural thing, right?
Yeah.
And you get to a certain point, you step up to a shot, your disc golf instincts take over, and then you're just going off of flow.
All right, I have another question that just hit me. Your USDGC win, what was your last putt on 18? What was the distance on that putt?
In the third round?
Yeah, the winning putt.
Yes.
You didn't know it was going to be the winning putt.
Correct. Okay.
But what was the distance on that putt?
18 inches.
Oh, you put it under the basket?
Yeah, it was a really, really good approach with, believe it was my H1. I actually had picked up a nice strategy on hole 18 from Yulee. Instead of going maximum distance forehand, I was playing a more conservative shot into the hill to try to not land with any hyzer. When you land on hyzer on hole 18's fairway, you tend to roll 50-50 odds. So I was taking a little bit of distance off just to make sure that I was landing soft. And it put me in a really comfortable position where I was throwing an overstable fairway driver, and I was really connecting on that shot.
And you
week.
put that second shot 18 inches?
Yeah, it was a tap-in for birdie. So it felt really good. It got me, basically, I didn't know the last round wasn't going to get played. I didn't even start hearing murmurs about that until I went and got lunch after the round. And people were like, yeah, there might not be a round tomorrow. And that was unprecedented at that time.
Oh, yeah.
We've had several rounds canceled since then on tour, but that was the first major one, and it was the last round, so obviously it was a pretty big deal. And I didn't think it was really possible, so when people were talking about that, I was thinking to myself before I even heard that, good thing I made that birdie in the last hole, because that gave me 4 strokes on Nico, 5 strokes on Ricky, as opposed to 1 less. It gave me a little bit of buffer.
I didn't realize your lead was that big.
Yeah, it was 4 on Nico, 5 on Ricky, and then it was 9 on MJ, who was going to be the 4th person on the card.
That's crazy. I mean, anybody can say whatever they want to,
Yeah.
but 4 or 5 strokes at Winthrop, that would have been a pretty miraculous comeback for anyone.
I felt good enough about that when my friends, honestly, the only people that I care about are the people that tease me. I'm sure that other people, say that it's not real because it didn't play out in what we thought would be the final round.
It's real.
That doesn't bother me really, but like when my friends tease me about it, the one thing that keeps me like feeling good about it was that buffer that I'd had. Also, you were
throwing the disc unbelievably well that week.
It was
a blue D2 that you forehanded a bunch
and backhanded actually. I was really on point.
Yeah, because you threw it on hole
all of them.
Hole 5 off the tee on hole 5. I will not forget some of your shots from that week.
That was when it was still off the dock.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Off the dock, and there were actually some adjustments that had been made in preparation for the last day's weather. We were not going to play 17 at all.
Oh, wow.
So think about the drama that unfolds on that hole every year. That hole was not in play for the final round had we played it. And also the beach hole, which is historically been a hole, hole 6, has historically been a hole that I've struggled on, was moved out into the open field. It was going to be like a 330 sidearm hyzer. So it kind of played back into my strengths a bit, going away from something that I felt like was a bit of a weakness. So
and 17's the huge separator.
Yeah, and 17 is a hole I feel comfortable with, but at the same time, I've never been in a situation where last round the major championships on the line and I've got to tee off on that hole, and I'm kind of happy that I don't have to face that.
That's the reason I asked the question about 18, because if you had, let's say you had like a 25-foot putt downhill that you hit on that third round, not knowing it was your winning putt, that feeling versus day 4 for the win is a much different feeling.
I got one more for you. Hole 18, that was the year that we had 2 different placements on the hole.
Oh, so one was the top of the hill?
One was the par 3, which is about 400 feet away, uphill, so it was kind of a chuck. And that was where the final round placement would have been. So we would not have been playing
and that's a huge
grueling
separator.
par 4. Yes, for sure.
That second shot sucks so much.
17 and 18 have historically been the top 2 hardest holes on the course, and really that's only ever changed when they've messed around with 9's iteration and its basket placement and fairway and all that. But other than that, 17 and 18 have always been surefire 1 and 2 hardest holes on the course. And for 17 to be gone and 18 to change to the par 3, basically what I'm saying is that there was a lot of things that I was feeling pretty comfortable with going into the final round. But I'll tell you what, those nerves going to sleep from second round to third round and going to sleep with the unknown third round to potential fourth round, it was a completely different night's sleep, I'll tell you that right now.
Did you wake up to the news, or when did they make the call?
I woke up to a phone call from John Dunn, a guy here in Charlotte, who would fit in nicely with the size of people in this car right now.
John's a big boy.
He's a big human being. He called me and said that the earliest tee times have been pushed back from 8 to 9. And I was like, okay. And then he called me a little bit later and said they got pushed back from 9 to 10. And at that point I was thinking, well, league card is normally coming in right before daylight when it's not backed up. And how is this going to work now? The next news I got was a phone call that said Saturday's round is being postponed to Sunday. And that was when I was like, you cannot postpone a round. That's not people's plans. People are flying back to Finland, to Sweden, to all around the world on Sunday.
Right.
People have jobs on Monday. They can't, there's so many things. People have hotel rooms booked until, Saturday morning, because they're going to check out Saturday morning, go play that round and drive home. So there's you can't. That's not possible. And the uproar from that was pretty crazy.
I remember that.
It happened quickly.
It was all the news was coming in quick, and it was.
And the course was going to be miserable on Sunday.
Oh, it would have been horrible. There was 6 down like crazy. The reason they canceled it, the last round, wasn't because of rain and lightning. It was because the wind was so high that there was a fear that a branch could get knocked down and land on a spectator or a player, and the safety of the tournament was in doubt. So they said we cannot reasonably allow people to be out there in those conditions.
Well, and that wouldn't have been disc golf. Like,
No, yeah.
When you're talking about hurricane force winds.
Well, that's what I think that there should be a discussion about a potential limit to what we can play in. I think that if we can stop because of lightning, which is obviously an understandable health concern and hazard.
Maybe anything above 35 mile an hour
I'm
winds.
thinking, yeah, like the number could be completely arbitrary, but whatever it is, uphold some level of consistency with it, because
it ceases to be disc golf at 50 mile an hour winds.
If you're playing in the morning,
that's right,
and it's calm, and then a 35 mile an hour wind comes throughout the day. Let's say it's a little breezy in the morning, but you're playing in 10 miles an hour, which is very easily playable, to 35, where it's not disc golf anymore. You're not playing the same course, you're not playing the same tournament anymore. And it's, like, we have to obviously consider what's fair and what's not fair. And that's not necessarily saying who the best disc golfer was. That's saying who got the best tee time. And that's I know that golf's been dealing with that for a long time, but there's certainly a part where it's like we have to figure out what makes the most sense, because when we start going out to Kansas, to Las Vegas, to, when we play the DDO, do you know what that's like?
Didn't they have sustained winds this year? Because Kyle was out there. We were hosting flex starts and stuff. Weren't there sustained winds of like 40 miles an hour?
Not during the NT.
Okay.
During the week leading up, we had one of our flex starts on that Tuesday. We had 40 sustained. I threw a hyzer flip into a headwind with a stiletto.
Yeah,
with an Opto-X stiletto.
Yeah, you told me about that, and I was just like, nope, wouldn't do that.
The wind was still up, but I mean the worst it was Saturday, and it was sustained 20. But what you're talking about, Jerm, we're staring at the real possibility of that for Worlds this year in Emporia.
Yeah.
Later in the year like that.
Yeah.
We don't know what the wind's going to be like.
Well, hopefully it's better. I believe what I remember from the 2016 Worlds in Emporia was that it wasn't nearly as bad as April weather in Kansas. April Emporia has never not been the wind blown open. They try to call it the glass blown, but no glass was being blown out there. It was just our frisbees. And I think that it's truly a weird thing, because there's a part of it that like brings me back to my soccer days playing in the rain, where it's so ridiculous that it becomes fun.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind that this is a national tour point series, or it was. Now it's the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and you're playing for something greater than what happens at this tournament.
Sure, you're not playing a weekend C tier up the road, which in that case the rain is fine.
Playing in wind like that, there's a skill to it, but at a certain point, if you can't make a 10-foot headwind putt,
right,
like it literally, the possibility of making that putt truly becomes minimal,
right,
or to the point where you don't even know how to get this to do it from a tap in. That's when it's like, all right, I'm not enjoying this anymore.
Right.
And it's like, in 3 minutes, this putt could be a breeze. No pun intended.
Right. Yeah, it gets much easier.
And when you're talking about stuff on the line, like USDGC, it hit me this year walking around. It just feels different. And I'm assuming Worlds feels like that too, where the feeling is there's something on the line that's beyond this moment. It's like, that this person's life has the potential of changing forever.
Yeah, truly.
If they win this thing.
Yep.
Like Nate talks about it, or you talk about winning it, and what it means to you. What it means to you existentially feels like it grows every year. Like every single year that you move on in disc golf, that feeling gets even sweeter or something. I don't know.
When you win it, you don't necessarily know if you'll win again. And you take the percentages of how many players there are and how many new players are coming in and how many people are hungry. The chances of you winning get smaller and smaller every year. So when you first win it, you're thinking, man, this could be the beginning of something big. And if it's not, then it becomes like, wow, how incredible is it that I did?
Yeah, nobody can ever steal that win
That's
from
nothing
me.
you can
I
take.
have that. Yeah, that's because when James won Worlds this year on that throw, I was driving by
James
myself. It's a guy. It's long hair. I'll show you his Instagram.
Connors.
James Connors.
Jimmy Connors.
Jimmy J. Connors. I was in the car driving by myself on the way back from the beach, and I had to come back for something. Anyways, by myself. I had the thing propped up on my dash, which is not, you shouldn't be doing that. When he hit that shot, I pulled off on the side of the road, and I think I screamed for 120 seconds. Because it's the first time in disc golf I've ever felt like a game-winning touchdown catch in a Super Bowl.
Hail Mary.
Hail Mary, a
From
game,
the other 30.
a bottom of the ninth grand
that.
slam kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was more than that. It felt to me, it was the Kawhi game winner, because it was the bounce,
right.
hold. Everybody holds their breath. That
Yeah.
shot it looked great out of his hand.
Yep.
But there's so many variables, and so it just became this constant. As the disc got closer and closer, you started to allow yourself to think that you might watch this happen.
Yeah.
And to have it actually happen.
No way it's gonna happen.
So I have another layer to this, because Sam that films for Disc Golf Pro Tour hung out with us. Sorry. So I was playing around with him, and I asked him about it. I said, "Were you there?" He goes, "I got the shot." He's the person that was holding the camera and got that shot. So before he did disc golf stuff, he worked for NBC Sports in Boston. He's been on the ice, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. He's been in Fenway Park for major baseball moments in October, all of that kind of stuff. He's been in the Garden for huge basketball games. He said that moment immediately was the number one sports experience he's ever been a part of.
That's
he's
He's qualified to make that
he can
statement.
actually say that because he's been in those moments.
Yep.
So I thought that was really cool.
I've done a lot of. I feel like we've had this conversation many times, and I've had this conversation with other friends as well, trying to piece what could be the most similar relation to what happened. How could you possibly
Stop working. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good.
I'm really sorry, Jerm.
No, you're fine. What could possibly be the closest relation to that moment? And I still haven't, like, with all of the minds that we've put into this, I've not been able to really break it down into anything other than just what could be more special. How could you script, unless it were?
And it's against Macbeth.
The
Right.
thing is,
And
there isn't a world championship in golf. There's several majors.
But even if you single out one major,
There's
who
not
made,
one
Who
that's-
made a shot? Who's made a walk off
Right.
in any? Open it
Right.
up to every golf major.
I'm just
Who's
trying
had
to, like,
that moment? It hasn't happened.
I'm trying to frame, like, if somebody could ever match it, I think it would have to be in a golf-like scenario, because that is where the odds of something miraculous happening in that way are the smallest. But still, the moment, as far as, like, it would have been like a no-name. That's not fair, because James is obviously not a no-name. But like a mid great
guy.
player beating Tiger in his prime at the Masters, with acing hole 16 or something,
Right, that's the thing,
or
is that
getting
you
a 2 on 18 at in Augusta. I don't know.
You can find comps for individual segments of that moment, right? You can find walk-offs, you can find championships, you can find all those things. But when you combine who he beat, how he did it, the position he was in after his drive, that's the part. Of course, it's never going to get talked about. It was a bad drive.
Yeah,
and then he laid up.
Which everybody's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
We said it at the shop. Everybody was watching it. Like, if you're going to lay up,
After Paul's great drive.
great drive.
It wasn't like just like, oh, he laid up. Like, Paul had already thrown the best drive you can throw in that hole. He could see the basket in one shot, which is that's insane. If you play that hole, seeing the basket as a straight shot on your second
outside of a terrible upshot, like just a legendary, grip lock, he's birdieing that.
Yes.
So James knows going to there. I don't know. You might know. Did he throw to that spot intentionally because he wanted to try to throw in from there, or did he lay up there thinking
Because there was nothing else.
there was just nothing else he could have done?
No. If you know James, his belief in his game, especially with the putter shot. I mean, who's had more ace runs and aces in the last 3 years on film
with putters
than Conrad?
Yeah.
Like, the guy throws them in routinely because he played to his bread and butter spot. Now his approach is actually a bit short. He had to throw the turnover line.
Yeah, right.
Like, he wanted to give himself the straight shot.
Okay.
So that was the tee shot. Obviously didn't help. His approach didn't seem like, okay, now it went from very little hope to practically
none.
zero.
Did you
Especially considering Paul's drive.
Did you see the slow-mo that we did of it where you see just how close that disc was to coming out of the basket?
No.
Because it comes in super flat, and if this is the basin, it approached the chains like here, and it only caught like that much of the back side of the thing, and I mean it's a quarter of an inch from
imagine that
spitting
not
out.
staying in.
Yeah,
Imagine a spit out in that situation. Imagine what we've been talking about for the last 3 months instead of what we've been talking about.
Right. Paul sold 57,000
or 5 months.
6 claw zones.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like
the whole scope of it is differently. MVP,
Yeah, everything.
I mean, think about what that moment did for MVP.
Would you have a yellow and blue envy right now?
No, we would not.
Yeah.
And James, he probably self-admittedly wasn't having a fantastic year. Like that was
not to the standards that we all
I mean,
uphold.
yeah, right. Compared to, I know he was learning a brand new bag.
Yeah.
That first whole few months of the season, he was throwing stuff that was like it just wasn't working for him, and so that was the moment that his bag finally clicked. It was it was an amazing, just a freaking amazing world.
Easily the most humble world champion we've ever had.
Yeah,
which, you know, I don't necessarily think that you have to be humble to be respected in disc golf. I think that there's a certain amount of it that, like, you have to find your pace of energy that fits for you in the sport. And a player like Paul, he's like, you know, we see these in all sports where, like, I call them world beaters. Like, these are people who their main mission is to be the very best, and that's what motivates them. That's what challenges them. We see that with Ricky Wysocki. We see that with a lot of their top athletes. James is just good, and he doesn't necessarily have to be in your face about it. And not saying that Paul or Ricky are in your face about it.
Well, they just have that insatiable, like Michael Jordan level of if I'm not first, this is the
it doesn't
worst
matter.
day. Yeah, who cares?
I think James can respect a second, third place finish in a big event.
Sure.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be like he left a failure. Him making that was just this incredible belief in himself, and that's all he runs off of that, and that's an incredible thing to motivate somebody. And you rarely see somebody with that mindset reach the pinnacle.
Right.
And so when they do, it's another storyline that adds to all of it.
That's the other thing that you take away is we put some distance between the shot itself was the outpouring of love from every single
universally
person
loved.
remotely connected to the sport. Was just outpouring of love and excitement and just thrilled for the guy.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
So one of the things that makes our sport special.
Yeah, it does.